Hey guys, and welcome back to Beauty and Crime. If you're new here, my name is Maddie, and I'm going to share a true crime story with you and do my makeup at the same time. If you're not new and you have seen my other videos, welcome back. And I'm sorry that I have been on a little bit of a break. I took some time off, life got busy, so I'm back and I'm gonna have as many episodes coming out as I can every week. So stay tuned for that. I just want to start off by saying I mean no disrespect for anyone that I talk about in this case. I just gathered information off the internet and I'm putting it together in one video for you. Today's story is a spooky one and has been known as the Scream murders. I don't know if any of you have seen the Scream movies. They're pretty popular, so you definitely may recognize some things in it. It's pretty creepy. I would like to start by saying I mean no disrespect for anyone that I talk about in this case. I just gathered information off the internet and put it into one video for you. I want to give a disclaimer before we get started. Viewer discretion is advised. This case is not for everyone. We're going to be talking about murder, death, and graphic crime scenes. I hope everyone's doing well right now and everyone's getting ready for the holidays. I have not started any of my holiday shopping and I need to do that. So hopefully everyone else got a jump start on that. All right, let's get into the case. In this case, we are going to be traveling to the United States and we are going to travel to Pocatello, Idaho. All right, we're going to be talking about the tragic death of Cassie Jo Stoddart. She was born on December 21st, 1989 in Pocatello, Idaho, making her 16 years old at the time of her death. According to her family, Cassie Jo led a simple life, simple teenager, normal life. She liked to draw and listen to music, just did stuff the average teenager would. She was described as very kind, a straight A student, and she was just loved by everyone. Cassie had a boyfriend named Matt Beckham. They went to the same school together, and at that point of her death, they had been together for about 5 months. They would spend a lot of their time together at Cassie's house, hanging out, watching movies, and they were just young and in love. She had a younger brother and an older sister, making her the middle child. And she was just very close with her family and had lots of friends. Everyone said she was just such a positive person and really nice to be around. Pocatello? I don't know if I'm saying this right. I may not be. I apologize if I'm not. I'm really bad with my words. Pocatello is described as a small town and everybody said it just felt very safe until the day of September 22nd, 2006. On a weekend in late September, Cassie's aunt, Allison, and Uncle Frank asked her if she would come house sit for them as they're going out of town. And Cassie would often do this for them. She'd watch their pets or their house, or she'd babysit her younger cousin. She was very excited not only to make some extra money, as she was saving up for her first car, but she also was getting to stay in a big house and show that she was responsible and that people could trust her. So she was really excited that she got the opportunity to do this. So Cassie agreed to watch over her aunt and uncle's house and also some of their pets, which was not far from her house, only a few miles. On September 22nd, Cassie's mother drove her over to her aunt and uncle's house, dropped her off, where unfortunately, this is where Cassie's life would tragically end, and she would say her last goodbye to her mother as she dropped her off. Now, if you are sitting at home right now, watching this video in the dark alone, get up and make sure your doors are locked. You might be feeling that while you listen to this case. Or you might be feeling like, wow, I don't know who I can trust anymore. Cassie got comfortable in the house, made sure everything was in order, the pets were okay. She sat down to relax and she decided to invite her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, to come hang out with her at the house because she didn't want to be alone. Matt decided to invite his friend Tori Adamick, who also brought along his friend Brian Draper. The boys were friends of Cassie and her boyfriends, and they were unaware of the darkness the two boys were keeping from them. Brian Lee Draper was born March 21st, 1990, and Tori Michael Adamick was born June 14th, 1990. Brian spent most of his childhood in Utah when his family moved to Pocatello, Idaho. He met Tori at the start of high school, where they all were students at the Pocatello. They were both interested in films, and they recently started recording their own. Keep that in your mind, because that is where this story kind of takes a twist and a turn and turns pretty disturbing. I think I forgot how to multitask, how to talk and do my makeup at the same time. It's been a while, so bear with me for this video. When they arrived at the house that Cassie was watching over, they decided to watch a movie all together. The two boys spent around 2 hours at the house before leaving, as they said they would prefer to watch a movie at the movie theaters. They left the house and left Cassie and Matt alone. Unknowingly to Cassie and Matt, one of the boys had snuck downstairs and left the basement door unlocked, so they could re-enter the house later that night and play out their sinister plan. A few hours later, the two boys returned to the house. They parked down the street, far away from the house, so that Cassie and Matt couldn't see that they were returning. And they changed into dark clothes, put on gloves, and put masks on to hide their appearance. They then snuck back into the residence through the basement door that they had left unlocked, while Cassie and Matt sat upstairs watching the TV in the living room. This is when Tori and Brian proceeded to make loud noises in an effort to lure Cassie and her boyfriend down to the basement. At that time, that did not work out for them. They decided to find the circuit breaker and turn off the power to the entire house, which completely would be to freak them out and frighten them. Cassie was frightened by the power going out, and it was at this point in time that Matt was supposed to be heading back home where he lived, because they're teenagers and they can't spend the night together. But Cassie didn't want Matt to leave. She was totally freaked out. She had no idea what was going on. It could have just been a power outage, but she still had a weird feeling inside. So Matt tried his best to call his mother, hoping to get permission to spend the night so he could keep his girlfriend at ease and be there for her. But Matt's mother refused, and she did offer for Cassie to come home and stay with them. Cassie was very responsible, and she didn't want to leave the house where she promised that she would be staying at for her aunt and uncle. And she said that she needed to be there for the pets and the home that was left in her care. Unfortunately, this decision would be fatal for her. Around 10:30 p.m. on September 22nd, Matt's mother came to pick him up. Now, we do need to remember that these kids are only 16 years old, and how was Matt's mother to know what was going to happen that night? So it's sad, but I understand why she didn't want to let her 16-year-old son stay in a house with his 16-year-old girlfriend when they're all alone. Who knows what could happen in there, right? As Matt was on his way home from leaving Cassie, he tried to call Tori to see where he and Brian went after leaving, to see if he could meet up with them, hang out for a bit longer. He could barely understand Tori when he answered the phone, and he figured they were whispering because they were in a movie like they said they were going to see. But at this point, the two boys were still in the basement, waiting to unleash the worst violent attack on Cassie, who had no idea what was coming. For a second time, the boys threw the circuit breaker. I have so much trouble saying that word. The circuit breaker, and waited, hoping that Cassie would come down the stairs to turn the lights back on. When she didn't come down the stairs to turn the lights back on, This is when they decided to walk up the stairs and see if they could find her. One thing that Matt mentioned is that the first time the lights went out, they were sitting watching the movie, and the family dog of the house that Cassie was watching kept staring down the basement stairs, barking and growling as if like he could see something was there, or he could tell that someone was down there, but they didn't think anything of it, obviously. And the dog knew what was up. Dogs always know. So Brian was armed with a dagger and Tori was armed with a hunting knife, and they had them in their hands as they crept up the stairs. I want to give another disclaimer that this is where things are going to take a gruesome turn, and I'm going to go into more of the details of the murder, so please skip ahead or don't continue listening if this is going to be triggering for you. When the boys come up the stairs, they try to slam the closet door to scare Cassie, but she was asleep on the couch. And this is when they decided to put their attack on her. The two stabbed her approximately 30 times, 12 which were fatal. After they brutally stabbed Cassie as she slept on the couch, not knowing the danger she was in, they left her there to bleed out alone. The following day, Tori met up with Matt while Matt repeatedly tried to call his girlfriend and never got a response. He had no idea what had happened that night, and he had no idea that his friend was the one who did it. Her body was not found until 2 days after the murder, on September 24th, 2006. The officers who were called to the scene have noted that her body was covered in blood and had huge, deep lacerations and stab wounds. I want to note here that it was Cassie's younger cousin, who she had watched all the time and had a really good relationship with, who found her body, which was horrible for her, and it really did affect her and scar her for the rest of her life. It thankfully did not take long for the investigators to determine that Tori Adamick and Brian Draper were the ones who were responsible and the last to see Cassie alive. Tori had been the first to be interrogated, and he was interrogated the same day that they found Cassie's body in her aunt and uncle's house. He first told detectives that he and Brian had gone to the house at around 8:30 p.m. and attended a party. When the party was only 4 people, they decided to leave and go do something more fun, like go to the movie theater, because they were unaware that it was just going to be the 4 of them. He then said that the boys went home to his house and slept there. When detectives probed Tori about the movie he had apparently seen that night, he said he couldn't remember anything about it, which was very suspicious. When both boys were interrogated, they both tried to blame the other when realizing they were caught. 3 days after finding the remains of Cassie, Brian Draper led the investigators to the stash of evidence he had buried in the Black Rock Canyon area, which they planned for no one to find, but he cracked under pressure. This included 2 dagger-styled knives, a silver black-handled knife with a smooth blade, a folding knife, a red and white mask, latex gloves, and a videotape that contained footage of both the killing and planning of Cassie's murder. They recorded the entire thing, and this is why it is called the Scream murder case, because they carried out something almost identical to the movie. And it turns out they were inspired by it. The weapons were purchased at a pawn shop with the help of a friend who was 18 years old. The footage also showed footage of them later reacting to them killing her. The footage that was found shared that they had been planning her murder weeks in advance, and they had multiple other names on their hit list of who they wanted to murder, just like they did to Cassie. They repeatedly are heard saying, in quote, "just killed Cassie." Brian is heard saying, and quote, "we just left her house. This is not a fucking joke." I stabbed her in the throat and saw her lifeless body. These are 16-year-olds. Ugh. The transcript of the tape, which was later read out loud in court, has shown Brian Draper exclaims how they'll make history becoming notorious serial killers. They then reference notorious serial killers like the Hillside Strangler, the Zodiac Killer, and Ted Bundy. They also have been heard mentioning being inspired by the Columbine high school shooters and by the horror film Scream. Scream is filmed and is about several teenagers being killed by a mutual friend, just like this little tape they were creating. This makes me so frustrated because they wanted to make a tape. They wanted to be famous. And I don't understand how they thought they'd get away with this. What their people would be like, oh my goodness, praise them for this video they made. Let's make it into a movie. But they took her life away. She was 16 years old and her whole life was ahead of her. It just really pisses me off. On April 17th, 2007, Brian Draper was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Tori Adamick's trial began on May 30th, 2007, and he was convicted of the same charges on June 8th, 2007. Cassie's mom has said, "I'm just happy my baby got her justice." Both the boys had received life sentences in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 32 years to life for conspiracy behind the brutal murder. So they're in there for life. They are both still serving their life sentences at the Idaho Correctional Institute. In 2010, both boys tried to appeal their sentences, but they both were denied. Thank goodness. Also in 2010, the Stoddart family filed a civil lawsuit against the Idaho School District. They had claimed the school was negligent and should have known that the boys were a posed threat to others. Because technically, if they weren't caught, they would have done this probably to more people and more students and more kids. This was later dismissed and sees that the killer's actions were not foreseeable. I can't imagine what Cassie was thinking when she was awoken on the couch to her so-called friends were stabbing her over and over. And Matt obviously is devastated for what happened that night to his girlfriend. He had no idea that his so-called friends were about to murder his girlfriend, and he probably thinks that if he had stayed, maybe he could have done something, but unfortunately he probably would have been murdered too. These boys were horrible humans and had such a horrible attack that I don't think he would have survived either. The case Miller v. Alabama decided that mandatory life sentences without parole for juvenile offenders are unconstitutional, and this means that Adamick and Draper's sentences could be reviewed in the future and could be changed because they were technically juveniles when they had done these crimes. After the murder, Draper and Adamick left the Whispering Hills residence and continued to film their reactions as they drove. Prosecutor maintained the teen's murder in an attempt to achieve fame in the same manner as the Columbine killers. So I really hope nothing has changed. The murder devastated the Pocatello community, including lots of families, especially the family that she babysat for. Frank reportedly turned to alcohol to cope with the tragedy, turning him into an alcoholic, and others, such as the convicted murderer, Tori Adamick's mother, wrote a book about the crime and what happened that night. Shannon Adamick authored The Guilty Innocent to highlight what a nightmare the murders of Cassie Jo Stoddart and the subsequent punishment for the crime, and basically what happened to all the people involved, because she did lose her son that night too, but she lost him because he was a murderer. 10 years after her murder, her brother told the Idaho State Journal, "I just miss having my sister right there, a grade above me. I felt like I was always a step behind her, looking up to her. She really was a role model. She was really smart, doing good, and had a lot going for her. That is just devastating, and this family lost their daughter who probably had a lot of potential at life, and it's just so tragic, and I feel so sorry for them, and I really hope they're found some kind of peace and are doing well, and her siblings are doing well. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like, you can turn on my post notifications and you can find out every week that I am posting a video. I'm going to try and post one every Friday still, this week not included, because I'm going to probably be posting it on a Monday or a Sunday. So please stay tuned. I'm going to be back into things and there'll be lots more content coming for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay safe, stay warm, and don't forget to share your love.